toutes les institutions politiques de la RDC sont illégitimes.
All the political institutions of the DRC are illegitimate. So we must think about how to return to constitutional order. December 2017 is approaching, when elections are supposed to be held. Nothing has been done. The Congolese people must stand up.
Militants have attacked and killed another UN peacekeeper at a base in the Democratic Republic of Congo, adding to a growing death toll for the force in recent weeks. It happened in the east of the country, which has been racked with violence for years. Earlier this month, the UN announced it was cutting the budget for its peacekeeping force there. Secretary General Antonio Guterres is urging the country to hold elections. President Joseph Kabila says they'll happen soon, but his mandate expired last year, and his refusal to step down is adding to the political uncertainty. But if the opposition took power, would they be able to quell the attacks? Well, to help unpack these issues, I'm joined now by Michael Chibangu in the English city of Leicester. He's the president of the Association for Development and Democracy in Congo, which works with the opposition in the DRC. Michael, good to have you on the Newsmakers. So the UN saying that we're going to have a bit of a drawdown when it comes to peacekeepers, right? Or as they call them, MONUSCO. But then we're having attacks in the past couple months, which means that the UN gets sucked in even more and they have to add individuals or dozens of peacekeepers to it. Where do you stand on the peacekeepers issue? Should UN peacekeepers leave or should there be more of them?
Unfortunately, as you have mentioned, the situation on the ground in DRC is actually getting worse. So to think about pulling down the number of UN troops at this particular time wouldn't be reasonable, because if you look at the attacks or the situation on the ground, you'll find that not only you have rebels or attacking the population, but you also have the Congolese army. Much of the abuses that are committed on the ground are also down to the fact that soldiers in the army are unpaid and they are living on the back of the population. So wherever there are problems and the soldiers are deployed, we notice an increase of abuse and attacks. So the UN actually provide security for the population. So I think that the decision should be delayed until there's political stability.
Yeah, so the UN Secretary General, in trying to explain the cut, had said that what is needed fundamentally in DRC is fresh elections. And I guess nobody really disagrees with that except maybe for Joseph Kabila. But let me then ask you, would there be much of a difference if the opposition came to power, given that the East has become so ungovernable, right? So, you're saying the army is committing atrocities. They are committing atrocities, but you also have Mai, you have LRA, you have CNPSC, you have a bunch of groups doing terrible things. So does it necessarily mean that if Kabila, holds fresh elections and the opposition comes to power, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll keep the East under control, does it?
Well, I think it may well do, because you have Joseph Kabila has been in power for now 16 years and counting, and he clearly has failed to bring stability into Congo. So this obviously he cannot continue. With him, the situation is not going to improve. It's actually going to get worse. So that we think with someone else, at least there will be a chance of improving the situation on the ground, because we've seen that under his leadership, the army has not improved. The army is part of the group you've mentioned, a number of different groups that are committing atrocity in DRC. Unfortunately, you also have the government that is counted, the army that is part of it, which it shouldn't be the case. The army should be there to protect the population. And clearly, Kabila has failed. That's part of the reason why people want him to leave power so badly, because after 16 years in power, we're seeing that when things are not getting better, they are getting worse. And more we see different groups rising, even in parts of the country where we previously had no problems. For example, in the areas such as the Kasai, which is in central Congo, right. They didn't have problems before, but now we have problems there, instability.
But then, again, let me ask you, what makes you think that any opposition figure would have the authority, both in a political and moral sense, to get those armed groups to put down their weapons?
Well, you see, one of the reasons why we have so many armed groups is because of the lack of legitimacy and the lack of support that Kabila has. So you have people forming local defense group, because there's obviously a vacuum there. And also you have a leader that is contested. You have people rising up against him, fighting him, wanting him to leave. And even in different areas, when you hear this, the reason why, you're trying to look at the reason why people are fighting, there's so much instability, is but because of the leader is not accepted. He has lost all legitimacy. We believe that with election, we will have someone that the people support. That alone will reduce the number of problems, and with that, the president will have a mandate to restore and reform the armed services and give them the necessary means to fight, because it hasn't been the case for 16 years. And we have people in the position who are competent, who are also popular, and who want election that unfortunately haven't happened, and we don't know when they will happen.
If those elections don't happen, there are some who fear that the DRC will slip into civil war again. There's been a low intensity, I guess, according to the best definition out there, but it's still not a great definition. There's been a low intensity conflict, mainly in the East, for more than 2 decades, right? But there hasn't been civil war for a long time. There are those who fear it will slip back into civil war. Is that an exaggeration, or is it real?
It is not an exaggeration. It's actually real. What is happening on the ground progressively, Kabila is losing control of the country. And now with this problem of election with him, he's done his 2 terms. The constitution says that he cannot stand again. But instead of going, what does he do? He delays the election to stay longer in power. And this is actually bringing the country to a point where if he refuses to leave, people will have no other choices but to either take it to the street or take arms, which is something that will not be good for the country. But it's all down to Joseph Kabila refusal to leave power. It's not an exaggeration. We are reading there, we are seeing it happening, but unfortunately, not much is done to prevent it.
Michael Chibangu, it's been great to have you on the Newsmakers. Thank you very much for joining us from Leicester.